Hi guys, welcome. My name is Heather from ShareBird, a site where top product marketing leaders share their expertise. We're really excited for today's event. We have a fantastic panel on influencing cross-functional stakeholders. I want to share a couple of announcements before the panel. First, we've launched ShareBird Recruiting. We help tech companies hire trajectory-changing product marketing talent. ShareBird is the largest community of product marketers and top companies, and now we're connecting the ones that are passively looking for their next role with top employers. So if you know anyone hiring great product marketers right now, we would love an introduction. And if you're lightly open to a new role yourself or want to see what's out there, you can share your confidential preferences at the link in the chat, and we'll keep you top of mind for the right opportunities. Next, for the format for this event, the first half of the event will be questions from the moderator, and the second half will be live questions. There is a Q&A feature on Zoom. Go there to add your questions for the panel and share your questions right away so that others can upvote them. Lastly, our next Q&A panel is May 21st on mastering market research. You can register for that event in the next link that I'll drop in the chat. And with that said, I'd love to hand it over to Jack and the panel to introduce themselves and get started.
Hi, thank you, Heather. I'm Jack. I'll be your moderator for today. And let me pass it off to whoever's on my screen first, which is Laura, to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura McCaskill. I'm head of product marketing at Atlassian, working on strategy collection.
Very nice. How about you, Eric?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Eric Bensley. I lead product marketing for CRM at ServiceNow.
Very nice. And hey, Lauren.
Hey, I'm Lauren Buckman. I'm excited to be here with all of you today. I am a Senior Director of Product Marketing at GitHub.
Very nice. So good variety of industries that we all come from, but the one commonality, of course, is our experience and passion for product marketing. I find today's topic to be an interesting one, right? Because influence, it can be so broad, but PMM, I'd argue that it's one of the most cross-functional roles in any tech company, right? But where you influence almost everything, but control almost nothing. Some of you might roll your eyes on me at that, but I do find that to be like the consistent thread, no matter which company you're at when it comes to product marketing. And since it's so broad, I think we have to scope it down a little more, make the context more PMM specific. So we're gonna split the questions into three parts over the next half an hour for the audience. We're gonna talk about influence at the IC level, right? And we'll give it more situational context as we go. We're gonna talk about influence as a team leader, and we're also gonna talk about influence as an executive, right? So we'll spend about 10 minutes on each, and then the second half, to Heather's point, on addressing live audience questions. Okay, so to kick things off, like I want to go back to the point I made about how, PMM is cross-functional and influence a lot, but control not a lot. I want to open it up with Lauren, actually. If like what experience made you come to terms with that, if you agree, and did it shift the way that you operate and run the team and work with your cross-functional stakeholders?
Yeah, just to repeat the question, because PMM is cross-functional, we're highly cross-functional. We have a lot of accountability, but not always control or authority on. And then what was the second part? Just to make sure.
Yeah, so like, was there a particular experience that really made that come to light where you're like, all right, like this is the environment in which I'm operating in, and did it shift the way that, you manage the relationships, whether it was on your team directly or with your stakeholders?
Yeah. So many experiences. Why don't I start off with I'll age myself here. So I was an early marketing hire at Cloudflare. And I was so early that none of us even had broken out titles. It was just, you're a marketer, no matter what the work is. And I was trying to come to terms with the pace at which we were shipping launching particular features or making different announcements. And we had two competing priorities. One that was more about a technology that would provide kind of a benefit to the ecosystem in terms of securing the internet and dealing with HTTPS, SSLs, benefits to folks. And then the other one was very commercially viable as it related to uh, uh, SSL certification certs for SaaS companies. So both in a shared space, similar audiences, and we were going much harder on the benefit to the larger ecosystem and not to the one that was going to be most commercially viable. And it taught me, I was feeling confused and maybe even a little frustrated at the approach we were taking. And it wasn't until I had an opportunity to look at the potential newsworthiness of the benefit that we were going to provide to the public good as trying to be good stewards of the internet and the brand lift we were going to get out of that, combined with the desire and challenge that we'd been having in securing a really great customer quote for the more commercially viable piece. And I think the thing that it taught me is listening is a really great way to gather more context. And yeah, I think the takeaway that it's given me is when everybody has access to the same information, we will tend to come to the same conclusions. Um, uh, the thing that I was able to accomplish there was, yes, you can also listen to those things, gather the context, and you can still push people in a direction that like PMM has an opportunity to push people in a direction where we can have a better outcome for the business and get people out of more of their linear, straightforward thinking. And so the question became, what might we be able to do in terms of um, pushing on this SSL, like this more commercially viable option, um, and to show other pathways to getting it out there and keeping us from having a huge delay and combining it to a bigger moment. That was a
Yeah.
long-winded answer. Sorry, everybody. I will
No, it's okay. We'll treat that as a warm up. And like my
Yeah.
my takeaway from that was, getting the inputs in order to influence in the compelling way sometimes is more important than jumping to an output. Put it like that.
Gain trust. Yeah.
Okay, let's shift into the first section that we talked about, like kind of going a little bit to the ground level of, we all started out in a more junior capacity at some point in our careers, right? So, how do you influence as an IC? And the situation here, I think, in the PMM context is like sometimes, whether we like it or not, we're leaned on to create presentations and assets. So the question to you, Eric, when you're building an asset, right, and a senior sales rep comes back and wanting to make changes, revisions, many rounds, maybe at some point you call a stop, put a stop to it. But when they want to change a core message, like how do you remember a time where you had to hold a line? And like, where do you draw that line without making enemies within the company?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, it's happened a lot of times. There and rep, I assume we're talking about a sales rep here. Sales reps
That's
have
right.
opinions. They're always influenced by customers. They're always influenced um, most of the time by the most recent customer conversation that has happened. And they always come with passion, and that relationship is critical, right? I think in product marketing, there's kind of multiple currencies, if you call it, in terms of what you can use to bargain with partners like this. Um, I think the one that is probably the hardest to capture, but the most important is just intuition and making things intuitive. As a product marketer, I think a lot of the conversations I have, especially that I've had in my career as an IC, where I wasn't able to call the shots, I wasn't the decision maker, was really just trying to leverage logic and make something make more sense than what I was hearing from someone else. And so I think that takes time, but that is absolutely a currency of product marketing. If you can convince somebody that your angle makes more sense, you can put it in a visual style that lands with somebody, I think that's always a currency that product marketers have, and that's what I look for in I see product marketers today is the ability to intuitively communicate and make something make more sense. So I think that's one way. I think the other one is using customers, right? So if you don't have the ultimate decision making, no one's going to argue with a customer. Now, they could interpret a customer differently, so you might need multiple customers. But in this specific case, if I was working with a sales rep and I got conflicting feedback, and I knew it was something that I couldn't just say no to, I would take it to a group of customers. Hopefully, you have friendlies. I would give them the two versions, and then I would bring it back and say, this is what they liked, this is what they didn't, and make it not an argument about what we think, but about what the customers that we serve think. And so at that level, again, I think you have multiple currencies. You don't have the power to say no. That's a currency you get when you're sort of been designated as a leader. You have the power of kind of putting together an intuitive story. But in this specific case, I would use customers. So how can you use customers to validate what you're thinking? And you might actually find that the customer likes what the sales rep's saying more too, and then you got to change it. But you got to be ready to do that. But
Yeah.
I would always think about what's your currency in those conversations and which one are you going to use to ultimately have the right discussion. In this case, I would use the customer.
Yep. 100%. It's hard to disagree with the customer unless you're Steve Jobs and you think you know what everyone else wants, right?
That's right.
And I also really like how you talked about my takeaway was presenting folks with options, right? When you're not in the seat to
Yeah.
make that final decision, well, put it back to your stakeholders, but don't give them just one choice because then it becomes a debate. Whereas giving
Yep.
them options to then it becomes a discussion where you can get to the same direction or agreement. I love that.
Well said.
Um, um, we haven't heard from Laura yet. Laura, I know this isn't like a section we talk about, but I want to just pull you in. We want to hear from you, which is, you know, yes, there's off like if we all have the opportunity to pull in the voice of the customer and customer data, that's preferable, right? But like, what's one thing you wish you had known earlier on in your career, if customer evidence wasn't available? Like,
Mm.
was using data the best alternative to get stakeholders to trust your recommendation and instincts? Like, do you have any other advice?
Certainly, data is table stakes. I think, excuse me, um, always having a really strong understanding of the data that's going to back you up. I think the other thing that took me a while to learn and realize was understanding the motivation of your cross-functional partners. Why are you getting this feedback from your sales rep, for example? Like, where is this coming from? Is this, to Eric's point, is this coming from a recency bias where they had a very specific conversation just the other day, and it's this one customer, and maybe that's an outlier, and that's not actually something you want to go and like overhaul all of your messaging for. But maybe they need more talking points or guidance or more enablement on a specific element. I think really understanding where your cross-functional partner is at and where they're coming from, what is motivating them, and having that context is going to help sort of direct you with, like, to Eric's point, what currency to use, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I think just to expand on what you said, data is great. And sometimes I think we all get caught up in thinking, well, if you want to make a data-driven or data-backed decision, it needs to be a huge sample size. But really, it's almost like the quality of the data and who you're going after and understanding the question behind the question or the question behind the objection in some cases. Um, all right, we're about 15 minutes in, so I'm getting notes or pings to move on here. Let's go a level up, right? We talked about ICs. What about influence as a team leader? And let's use product launches as the context here. And as a PMM, I'm 100% positive we've all experienced that. So I'm gonna bring you back into the fold, Lauren. So on product launches, right? how do you handle a situation where a product manager, a PM, is convinced that a launch is ready to go, all things are have checked the boxes on our R&D side, but you as the commercial lead on this, that the overall market story and prep work isn't ready there yet. Like, what is that situation, what that negotiation, what does that look like?
Yeah, really great question, Jack. I think when dealing with this particular scenario, and if you haven't been in this situation previously, you will be at some point. So working with when you have to give that feedback to a PM, it's their baby, and you're gonna basically tell them that their baby is ugly. And how do you deliver that in a way that we can take some of the personalization of our work and seeing ourselves in our work out of the equation and just reveal new information. So I think whenever you're giving tough feedback on quality, it's important to get yourself grounded in objective, measurable um, criteria for launch readiness. And so, depending on what's broken with it, you know, if it's product quality, is it the functionality and feature set? Great. If we're lacking particular features, do we can then say objectively, this is how it competes in the marketplace right now. This is not even a feature parity, or this misses the mark in terms of what we've heard from customer requests, or deal blocker, product requests from sales, or whatever those criteria are. If it's user experience, you could point to the amount of documentation or friction points required for users to successfully activate this. Or you could also look at other frameworks for a successful launch, which is, what is our adoption, like what does a successful launch look like, and what are our adoption goals, and how confident do we feel that we're going to be in launching this now as is. For those of us working in more technical areas, oftentimes I find that DevRel is a great partner to bring in to talk about developer experience in that space, or anybody else who can get you to an end user. And finally, I would say if you have a great working relationship and you've been doing private previews of product before it's getting ready to launch, just digging into some of what the users are saying to better understand, what is their experience? Is this up to par? And is this something that we're going to be really excited about? Finally, those are all the objective. Hey, how do we look at this and say, ooh, this isn't going to be great for this product, for our customers, for the business, but also dangle the carrot of like, hey, let's paint the picture of how great this launch can be if we were to adjust the following things. So we're working towards a shared goal of success together, and not getting into the interpersonal.
Nice. I'm wondering, for all the panelists here, do you guys religiously or consistently use a product launch framework or tiering framework in order to size the effort and get everybody aligned?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I'm hearing,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm seeing
Yeah.
everybody nod.
Yep.
We even have we have systems that have automated it for us and assign it so that there's less debate about doing back and forth and getting into that objective piece.
Yeah.
So we let the AI actually set it. We just set the criteria.
Yeah. So where I'm getting to with this is sometimes influencing becomes also easier if you've already laid the foundational groundwork and systems in place for driving consistent processes, right? There's less of the difficult negotiations to be had in the last mile, if you will. Let's stay on the launches for a little bit more. Laura, so launches often fail or fall apart at handoff points, right? Because so many people are involved. Um, what's a single what is a process change that has helped your team improve its ability to stay aligned across those teams and influence other stakeholders?
I'm gonna cheat here a little bit because it's not one single thing. It's so many things. So the single thing I'm gonna say is just managing expectations. That alone isn't a process change. There are lots of components to that. But when you get all of your stakeholders together and you're, kicking off a product launch, having that tiering framework so everyone understands, the scope of the launch and who's on point for each part of that launch. Um, that's super critical. And then I think you have to continue to over communicate constantly, because as the product marketer, you're the person who knows what all of the other teams are doing. You're the orchestrator, right? Your partner in uh, design or engineering or product or sales, they only have, you know, purview into a small portion of this launch. It is not the scope of their role. It is not the highest priority thing on their list. So it is your job as the product marketer to make sure they understand the role they're playing and what they're accountable for. And you're going to have to continue to remind them of that, right? So, as far as process change goes, I think it's, you know, communicating those regular updates when decisions are made, when things are at risk, what decisions need to be made and who's on point for them and when they need to be made by. And having those regular cross-functional check-ins with the right team. Usually I find that I'm setting up multiple cross-functional check-ins because there are certain teams that just like, we don't need to bring them in the room together. That is, not the best use of their time. So you have to figure out kind of the matrix of who's involved in what
Mhm.
throughout the launch process.
Yeah. I want to stay on this one because it like we're talking about product launches and how an ability to influence at the team lead level, right? But um and tiering frameworks and all that stuff help, of course. But um I think there's also times when an executive comes into the scene, right? And they have different motivations. And of course, like everyone wants things to be done as fast as possible, but an executive coming in with a strong opinion could always derail things, right? So how do you manage the fact that sometimes your stakeholders want different and even conflicting things from the same launch? Someone might be optimizing for speed, and someone might be optimizing for perhaps results that are only going to come a quarter or two later.
Mhm.
So yeah, like I wonder if any of you have perspective on that.
I can start with that. This is this happens all the time. The way that I navigate this is understanding who is the ultimate decision maker, who is that executive leader who at the end of the day can swoop in and make a call. If I have a specific recommendation of a direction we need to go, or they're going to come in with a change in mind, hopefully you have a strong working relationship with that person, or you at least know sort of where their motivation lies and what is highest priority for them. That said, you can't anticipate everything. But I think it's also balancing, when they do come in and they're like, "Hey, we need to launch next week," and you're like, back to, what we were just talking about with Lauren, we're not ready. Walking them through sort of, here's what's going to happen if we do that launch. Here's what's going to happen if we go with the plan of record. And presenting it in a way that's like, here's all the information. Ultimately, they are the decision maker. You have to present that information to them, such that they have all the details they know to make that call.
Nice. Eric, anything to add there? Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, influence and having multiple working relationships around an end product is really the job, right? So like a lot of these questions I feel like a little bit cut and dry. How do you deal with this situation? I think being a product marketer is dealing with that. I I feel like I'm kind of a coach at heart. I love sports. I coach my kids now. I coached even before I had kids. But when you coach, you're working with a lot of people that have different strengths. And I feel like that's the same with product marketing, right? So you have these like great large egos that do certain things really well. You have these folks that are like really collaborative and play their role. And if you sort of minimize any of it, you're going to get less out of the end product. And so I think it's not about like, how do I deal with this situation? How do I argue against this person or solve this? It's how do you build the trust so that, you know, in basketball, it's five people. In product marketing, it's many more. They all feel heard, right? And they have that trust with you. And that comes with not saying yes every time, not saying no every time, but saying like, I hear what you're saying and I'm going to calibrate it. But I think it's more art than science, right? Like it's more influence than ownership, right? All those things.
I love that. Yeah. Um, so we brought in that executive stakeholder, and when the power and the authority comes in, how do you manage up in a way? So let's continue that thread and move on to that. So influence, well, if we put ourselves on the other end, on the other side, what happens when you're a PMM but at the executive level? And the context, the situation we'll give here is more on narrative and or let's call it a story refresh at the company. And that can happen in a variety of ways and milestones that a company experiences. Laura, I'm gonna bring you back on stage, which is, and the question for you is, what's your approach to knowing when a new narrative or a narrative needs to change versus when the problem is just inconsistent execution of a great message? Like how do you drive alignment across the organization, or to perhaps a skeptical leadership team?
Yeah. I think narrative and messaging is probably one of the harder aspects because it is so subjective and everyone has opinions. And when you are building a narrative or messaging for the first time, it can be hard to know when you're done and what good looks like. So validating that with customers, and I think what Eric mentioned previously, bringing your stakeholders along on the journey and making sure they feel heard. So they're bought in on the message when you go to market with it. That said, you know, it's a living, breathing narrative. It is never fixed in stone. It will be in market for a time period, and then you're always going to iterate on it. You have to have a pulse on customer feedback and what your sales team is hearing and saying to know, the narrative is feeling stale, or identifying when, you can see it's being inconsistently used. I think with the inconsistency, that happens a lot when you have a larger scale and you have multiple different touch points across the sales process, and there's so many different teams and they're getting enabled at different points, and on different things. And then you just have this like pitch and collateral sprawl where things are out there and someone is making their own version of it. And then you kind of come across it and you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, where did this come from? Um, that I think is a clear signal that, oh, we've got some inconsistent execution of our messaging. And that's where it comes down to process of like, how do we get everyone on the same page of this is the core message? Let's do a road show. Let's make sure everyone really understands and has the collateral, and materials they need to get on board with that message.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura. I feel like you're a very strong over communicator and you're all about bringing people along for the journey.
I've never had anyone complain to me that they don't know what's going on.
That's great.
That's like my bar. I think somebody asked in the Q&A, like, how do you know when you're over communicating? I'm like, just keep communicating. If they actually tell you to stop, then you can dial it back.
You're like, even then, it's not a bad thing. It's okay. Yeah, something that I used to tell my teams, well, one thing I used to always say is like embrace being a broken record,
Yeah,
because like
so true.
psychologically it's proven like it takes 5 to 7 repetitions for anything to stick to somewhat long-term memory, right? So you got to do it, even though it's like, oh my God, I'm being annoying. You got to do it.
I would say, just to add to that, if you're thinking about the charter of your PMM team for those like maybe in management, I love a North Star of no surprises.
Mm.
No one should ever be surprised by anything that PMM is providing. And that goes up and down the executive to IC and cross-functional departments. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, like any change, people feel threatened by it, right? When I say people, I mean usually it's hopefully not like everybody, but there's going to be a few folks who are used to the way of how things were done or how we talk about things. And so the question to you guys is part of influence. I mean, for an executive, like your credibility is everything, right? So how do you actually build consensus without kind of using your level and your authority to drive change? And I'm going to start with you here, Eric.
The question is,
How
how do you build influence without sort of using your level and like throwing power around kind of thing?
exactly, right? Because building consensus is it might be easy if you're at a small startup, but as you scale and get bigger and bigger, it's not as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like your initial point about PMM not owning much of anything is a good place to start. It's actually what I love about product marketing. I think I think leadership is influence. It's not ownership,
Mhm.
right? Like the best leaders push teams to do things and because they feel compelled to do that, not because they're being told to do it, right? That might be a little bit of a, you know, stale thing that people say, but like it's true. Um, I think I've always sort of had this motto that like I want to be an opinion that people want, not that people have to get, you know. And of course, like at my level, I am an opinion that people have to get at certain times, but I never want to be a checkbox. And I've never been a leader who feels like they have to unnecessarily add feedback to a document if it's good to go, right? Like today I was looking at a document, I'm like, they probably expect something from me, but all I'm going to say is this looks good, keep going. So um, I think influencing and being authentic about like your intentions to make content better and working with teams and getting hands on.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's all part of it. I don't think I ever planned to grow to be a people leader, a leader of leaders. Like that was never in my intent. And I think if it is your intent, then you need to figure out why authentically you want to do that.
Hmm.
For me, it's always been because I like the work and I want to have more impact. And so, like, what is your reason for what I would ask and what I always ask people when they tell me they want to be people leaders is the why. You know, what's your why for why you want to be a people leader? If it's because you want to brag to your friends and family, like that's the wrong reason. It should be something that's really authentic. For me, uh, you know, I like coaching. I like seeing people shine. I like seeing the dynamics of teams, and people kind of build their own unique and authentic voice and see that interact with others. And like that's really meaningful for me. Um, but I think you got to have that authentic reason for why you want to be there, and it can't be because you want to own more stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of my thought on that one. Come real, come with your why, show up that way, and I think people will respect you, and not think that you're just like a checkbox on the racy.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true, right? People, respect is a two-way street, and um, if your intent is to influence someone to your own benefit, people aren't stupid, and they could sense that, they could smell it, right?
Yep.
So you're not gonna. It's almost counterintuitive to intentionally or purposely want to
Mhm.
influence for your own gain. Lauren, Laura, anything to add to that?
Um, I think I would add just in terms of influencing executives,
Hmm.
the perspective on executives change. For me, it's changed over the years as I've gained experience and worked with more of them. I think the more that we can see our executive stakeholders not as kind of these centers of power, but as people who are trying to navigate their particular role within the organization, we can look at it as how can we be helpful to them? Like, how can we help them be successful in their efforts? And I think that reframe can maybe shake off some of the nerves that we have in earlier stages, or if we're encountering a new executive. Like, they're a human being, they're trying to make the organization successful, they have less time and context than you do. How can we help them? And I think if we view our relationship to them as we're all in service to each other, how do we help each other out at work? It can be helpful. And then the other piece is when driving towards that consensus piece, I think you were asking about people kind of getting attached to ideas or it feeling a little strange.
Mhm.
I don't know. Is there like a raise of hands? Anybody here working in the AI space right now? Anybody?
Should we all raise our hands because everyone is
Yeah,
AI first
yeah.
and AI native?
The pace at which the marketplace is changing, I think that it's a better there's never been a more helpful time to be a PMM in helping people get their heads wrapped around that change and helping people process and digest it. And using like what is the like finding that common enemy, which is um, the thrash and the chaos in the marketplace is sort of everybody's enemy. How can we be in support of each other, of our leaders, of our companies, to help make sense of things, and like taking it from a service standpoint?
Very nice. We should probably move into the live Q&A. It's that time. But before we move on, just something fun for you guys. I'm gonna throw a little curveball, which is finish the sentence for me, okay? The most underrated skill for influencing stakeholders as a PMM is blank.
Underrated.
The most underrated skill for influencing stakeholders as a PMM is what? And I'll start with you, Laura.
I was thinking,
You're like, I'm gonna
okay.
go last.
We're gonna go on the fly here. Underrated. I think it's building trust. Yeah, you have to have those interpersonal relationships. I think I am sending Slacks to my partners constantly, and it's not just like a hi, hello, how are you? I deeply want to connect with you and I care about the things that are going on in your day to day. It is, I need something from you. And that thing that I need from you is not top of your list of things to do. So how do you get those things out of them? It's trust and partnership, such that they want to be able to do those things for you.
Nice. Lauren, how about you?
Um, I think the underrated is knowing if you're having a feelings or a data conversation. And when I say feelings, I mean, are you talking about are you talking to somebody that speaks data or that wants to talk anecdote? Knowing how to read that conversation of it is, are we talking about an emotional truth? Are we looking at data? Are we here to am I listening to a vent session, or are they really looking for input? And like really like being able to read the conversation that you're actually having versus what may be listed on an agenda.
This is like a 3 layers deep of knowing your audience, I feel like. How PMM of
Yeah.
you. Eric, how about you?
Self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Eric is in a very reflective mode today. He's in like Zen mode over here.
It's a skill you can't always teach, and it's so important to build trust that people know how they come across and how their words impact other people and their work impacts other people.
Very nice. Okay, I have a fun one. The audience has asked some great questions live and also just heading into this panel. I've got a list of submissions, so I have plenty of options to pick from. The fun one I'm talking about, uh, I'm just gonna throw it out there. Can you guys see the Q&A panel or should I? Okay, you can. Okay, so this is the one at the top. Okay, anonymous attendee. By the way, if you guys want to ask questions, feel free to put your names in here so we can call you out and follow up individually afterwards, or get back to you if it doesn't appear on the live discussion. But the first one here is, how do you influence or convince stakeholders who prefer to consult AI more than product marketing? Who wants to take this one? I'm not going to call out names, so just raise your hand. And if you don't, I will call you out.
I'll go,
Oh,
or
yeah, go
Lauren, you
ahead,
go.
Eric. No, please, you first.
Um, no, I think this one's super interesting. I think we have to compare what we're doing to what AI is going to give folks now, right? And so one thing that we've started doing at ServiceNow is synthetic personas, which are just basically AI based personas where people can ask them questions. So kind of give them uh, a place to go if they do want to test it with AI, but then also like be alongside it. What you can't do is say, I'm smarter than AI. Everyone's asking AI these questions, and I think you need to offer them a better alternative to ask AI and maybe ground it in some of the stuff that you know. So I think you have to give them, those people specifically, you have to give them a better option of AI that allows them to ask their question, but you can inform it a little bit. One of the ways that we're doing that at ServiceNow is these synthetic personas, which are really just Claude projects where they're grounded in certain information that we have on the persona studies that we've done, but they're really prompts that look just like the AI that they would ask too. So I wouldn't try to fight it, is my recommendation.
Lauren and Laura, do you guys have synthetic or PMM AI agents at your companies too?
We do.
Uh-oh.
And what I
Thought
would
I was the only
we've
one. Just kidding.
I was going to say we've gone beyond just the synthetic personas. We've created synthetic PMM bots. So there's different folks with great skills across the team, and one of our PMMs has just such an incredible craft of the pen. And so we've created an Ask an Eric, different Eric bot for give them the assignment, and it's actually become sort of a fun piece. It also helps us scale out a little bit more. There's so rather than like fighting it or feeling threatened by it, we've leaned into it and said, great, what can we do to create the context, like what markdown files are we providing to feed into these things so you can access it. You can access the same context windows that we've got, and yeah, we're having fun with it.
Nice. Yeah. Laura, how about you?
Yep, we are using a lot of AI in everything that we do. It's helping us scale. I think it can be a really awesome tool to have people react to something, to get something down on paper. In this question, I'm just thinking about like, okay, so maybe my stakeholder is someone in product and they've worked on something in AI that is related to messaging. Like, awesome. I would love to partner with you on that and see what you've started. Because it's going to be a thought starter. It's going to be a place to start having a conversation and review. But it doesn't mean that is, the end all be all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think working with my clients, everyone, if you're not working with a PMM audience, most of the time, and when you get to the discussion of like messaging frameworks and core assets and artifacts, everyone starts, they nod, but you can tell they're kind of like, oh, this is, a little bit too boring, perhaps. Like, how can we put this into practice, right? And those are great things to actually load into AI and scale what product marketing does, because before we all worried about adoption or internal adoption of what we were creating, but now, hey, if you want to like interact and interface with those things through AI, great. Why not, right? It actually helps us do our jobs better. Cool. So whoever asked that question, thank you. I hope that that answered it well, right? Lean into it. We're not trying to say humans are better than AI, but shape the AI to your liking in terms of being an effective PMM, and actually, in fact, encourage people to use it. Okay, next question that has a couple of upvotes. How do you track and prove something you've influenced as a product marketer? Anybody want to take this one? Eric's like, nope, not me. I'm staying on mute. Lauren, how do you track and
Uh,
prove?
this is top of this is top of mind. We're currently in the season for revenue kickoff, narrative refresh. And so there's been consensus among our team that when you know that, like specifically around a narrative piece, which we know is difficult to prove out, but you we've started to come up with a list of quotes or phrases or taglines that we want to see reflected in materials, and we know that we have nailed it when the executives think it was their idea and it's coming out of their mouths like so naturally, and then out of their mouths the rest of the organization gets behind it. But that so it's you kind of have to fall in love with that, being being more of a producer or behind the camera and not on stage, and have some fun with that too. Is just like, what are the key what are key messages that we want to get out there, and then, is that being said on stage? Is this being reflected in how sales are messaging out to customers and conversations are having with customers, as evidenced through the gong calls you're looking at? Like, what does that message pull through? That's like one piece. And again, have some fun with it. Almost like a bingo card of like, could we get folks to say on the internal kickoff? Could we get, this executive to say X, Y, and Z on stage at a keynote?
Is
I'd say
that is
that's
that
one.
something that you actually do with the PMM team and get like and
Yeah,
like yeah, wow,
yeah.
okay. That's cool.
Look, PMM is such a great role, but it can also be a little bit lonely, and proving out, I think strong internal PMM teams can have like create solidarity, just like we do with events like this at Sharebird, where we come together. Like, um, yeah, I think having fun and acknowledging some of the challenges out there, can give us all a little more courage out in our jobs.
Hmm. There's a question here that clearly is directed at Laura because I wasn't the only one that, really took away the over communicate mantra.
Mhm.
So this individual is asking specifically, like, can you, Laura, give an example of the type of over communicating? Like at what frequency?
Um, Weekly for sure. I mean, I work at Atlassian. We're very much using our own products and tools, and that's all about, project management and communication and teamwork. So we have regular rhythms where we're providing that level of updates to our stakeholders. I think, having your cadence dialed in of like every week, it's, what did we do this week? What decisions were made? What decisions do we still need to make? And where are we blocked? Or like, what do we need help with? Um, I like to think of like, if I were to ever, run into someone from my leadership team in the elevator and they're like, oh, how's it going with the, whatever launch? What's the 30-second pitch that I can give them of like, what do I need from them? Or what do I want them to know about it? Um, yeah, so I think it's at minimum weekly, and then that can be through the tooling that you have, the communication that you guys use, Slack, email, whatever. Um, and then I think also making sure you understand how to calibrate what is an update and you're informing people,
Hmm.
versus what warrants a conversation and discussion live. I think that's another important piece of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Eric, Lauren, anything to add to that?
I think given how the pace of business is changing, I would also say, like, I love everything Laura was just sharing. I would say find easy ways of giving a visual cue so that people don't have to read as much. So I
Yeah.
love a green, yellow, red in updates for projects or how is it going, escalation pathways, and like decision logs. Those are like, if you can focus like not just like frequency, but the framing of and uh giving people getting people oriented in terms of what's happening on the project, and making it sort of like that bottom line up front for folks that are maybe coming into the project for the first time, just making it very, very easy to read
Hmm. Hmm.
or skim, I should say.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of and another area where AI is helpful with, right? Just like
Yeah.
simplifying things and presenting information in different ways that's easier to digest. Eric came off of mute. He has something to say here.
Oh, I'm ready for the next question. I don't have anything to add to this one.
Oh, he's getting excited for the next one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, was there one that caught your eye? There's one that is jumping out to me. Well, I'll save that one for a little later. Okay. Um, how do you influence a group when they don't understand exactly what you do and find themselves on the more defensive side? Um, this individual saying that they've tried to kind of convince the stakeholders that, hey, PMM is there to help amplify and complement your job. But even though when they've shown or put together in a structured way, like a RACI, they're still not getting that reciprocation, it seems like. So how do you exert or exert influence on a group when they don't really understand what you do or perhaps see the value?
Yeah.
Started
For
working
me,
in dev tools. Sorry. I'm sorry, Eric.
no worries. Uh, I think for me, it's about like having the right executive sponsorship for the effort and why you're there a little bit. I think when I talk about PMM, you kind of have three bosses, right? You have your CMO, you have your head of product, you have your head of sales. And in any given day, like one boss might be louder than another. But in this particular case, if you're inserting yourself in a work stream, what's the strategic reason that you're there? I think if you're trying to force it, if people are not there, then that seems like an organizational challenge where the right sort of sponsorship isn't on product marketing to put you into the work streams. I work at a big company. This might not be the case everywhere, but if my team is, hitting a wall with anything, I'm like, hey, we have plenty to do. Let's go somewhere else.
Mm.
If it's not going to be so, that might be a little bit too sort of blunt tool, but I think if there's not a strategic reason you're there that doesn't have someone on the executive team believing that you should be there, then I would look for another place to have impact. There's a lot of work to go around right now.
Yeah, yeah, 100% of that. I remember, I mean, I've been at like larger companies, but also smaller companies where I was the first PMM. And I want to add to that, which is because you're in such a cross-functional role, don't fight all battles at once, right? You can choose one front, right? And over communicate, set expectations that this is the order of operations you're working through. And in my example, because the company at the time, our main objective was to move up market and prove that we can sell to the enterprise. All right, first order of operations is create that enterprise facing story, enable all our reps with the first pitch and all the like revamp asset library. Hey, give me 6 to 9 months to do that before I turn around and work with product on revamping the launch process. Right. So hopefully to this individual asking a question, this is another angle, like set the expectation and choose one thing to do at a time. Laura, anything to add to that?
I'll speak to, so most of my career has been spent in pretty engineering driven organizations in tech. I think that's probably a commonality for a lot of folks on the call, but apologies to those where this doesn't apply. And what I've found is that there's a couple different things. Like Eric, I think you're so spot on. Like, hey, let's push the resources where they are explicitly being requested and sponsored. I think if that's not as obvious as an option, which can be the case in some organizations, but find the folks where you can go make them successful, and then tout that. And don't trying to win everybody over, either through executive sponsorship or that approach may not always work. But find the folks that want to be successful and work with them, and other folks will get on board. They'll want to be a part of what you're making happen. So pick a couple of flagship groups that you want to work with, and do that well. Gain a reputation for being great to work with, and the folks that the right folks will follow.
Thank you for that. Um, Another fun question since we're about 5 minutes left. This one should be a bit more straightforward, but are there any books or resources about influence that you guys have read and would recommend to the audience here to pick up and read? No?
I
I
mean, it's a classic, but Dale Carnegie, How to Make Friends and Influence People.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like this one's like we said in the beginning, right? Like this is a broad topic, and so if it's in the context of PMM, there's no product marketing specific one. I
Mm-mm.
have an idea came to mind that's like 2 steps removed and is more on the HR front, which is Strength Finder.
Mhm.
And I bring that one up because I think because PMM you touch so many things. It's a balance of soft and hard skills. But someone earlier said we all have our strengths and superpowers. I really like what Eric said about being authentic, right? And you can't you like inf when you intentionally influence and you're doing it in an authentic way where you're like second guessing yourself, or you're trying to undermine others. I think the book Strength Finders is helpful because it helps you realize what you're good at. And the book's intention is to say double down on what you're good at versus trying to plug holes or look for like problems or weaknesses that you have, because I think that creates a cycle of self-doubt and then you don't really truly understand and accept who you are. And that would be my advice to the person who asked this question. Like, understand what you're good at, what your role is, lean into that versus, trying to, influence in a broad stroke type of way.
I would add to that. I think that's a great book and suggestion because product marketing can be so broad. Um, there's no one size fits all of like, oh, I'm a product marketer and we all do the exact same thing. When you can identify what you're really good at and what you enjoy most, that's where you're going to excel. And that can help shape the type of product marketer that you're going to be, which, I may operate and be really well versed at one thing, and Lauren and Eric could be, still working in the same craft and have very different, you know, things that they're excelling at.
Yeah. I'm gonna pull from something good I saw from submitted questions before this panel. Eric, you talked a lot about the finding that currency when it comes to stakeholder management. And the question is, do you have a framework or favorite approach for identifying that hidden currency? Like what stakeholders actually value to make an ask or initiative feel like a win for them or for both parties.
Um, I think the currency of individuals is very personal. It's what's authentic to you. I think in terms of how to influence others and understand what they're most sort of focused on. Yeah, I think that comes with a lot of conversation with stakeholders, but also the other thing that I think people struggle with in this department is just asking people what they care about and just like broadly trying to set up coffee chats and that sort of thing. People don't
Hmm.
often share their kind of true colors in those settings. Uh, m- my sort of hack here is just showing them things, right? Like as a product marketer, you have like a lot of ideas. If you're talking to your product leader, as an example, right? Instead of saying, "Hey, what's important this year?" It's like show them an idea of like the future of your products and get their reactions. Like when they see an MVP of something you might create, they're going to give you a lot more of the real like what they care about. And so I think my guidance there to really understand what people care about is put yourself out there and create something and see how they react to it. Don't ask them for broad questions. Um, People are busy, they're guarded, they're different in different situations. But when you start to put something in front of them that actually impacts their business, that's when you get their real reaction and understand what they care about.
So something concrete to elicit a reaction versus,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Very cool. Lauren and Laura, you guys are nodding. Anything to add?
I was just enjoying listening to Eric's perspective.
All right, folks, we're at time. I'm going to ask one last question. Actually, you know what? Heather's coming back on. I will not. No, Heather, all you. Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thank you so much to our panel and our moderator. We work really hard to curate the best product marketing mentors for you to learn from, including the people on this panel. When you're ready for your next job, we recommend looking for jobs on their teams. If you had a question that wasn't answered, you can search thousands of answers on sharebird.com or ask it on an upcoming Sharebird AMA. As a reminder, our next event is on May 21st on Mastering Market Research, and you can register for that event at the link in the chat. Lastly, if you have any questions or feedback for us, please email us at events@sharebird.com. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.